Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into one of the most beautiful and meaningful poems in your syllabus, Abisara, the Tryst by Rabindranath Tagore. This poem may look simple on the surface, but beneath its lines lie powerful ideas about love, compassion, transformation, and the journey of the human soul. And today, we are going to explore all of that together. So, before we begin, let me ask you a question. What does it really mean to meet someone, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually? That's exactly what this poem is about, right? So you can say that two characters, two different worlds, two different phases of life, and one unforgettable meeting. In the first part of the poem, the world is dark, stern, and full of turmoil. In the second part, everything is calm, bright, and full of renewal. So, what Rabindranath Tagore uses these two contrasting scenes to show how people change, how life transforms us, and how compassion can help us become our better selves. So, in this discussion, we will walk through the meaning and message of the poem. We'll try to discuss the symbolism behind August and April. Third is the transformation of Vasavadatta and Upagupta. Fourth is the deeper emotions hidden beneath the image. And we'll also discuss why the title, The Trust, Abisara, The Trust, is such a perfect fit. So, what do I request you to do? Grab your notebook, settle in, and let's begin our journey into the point. Right. I hope you would definitely like this poem. And you would also get some great outcome from this. Let's go with this. We will read the poem and we'll try to discuss line by line ideas. So, when we talk about Avisar, the Tryst by Rabindranath Tagore, it is a story poem based on a Buddhist legend about a monk whose name is Upagupta and a courtesan named Vasavadatta. The poem explores themes of love, like I said, compassion, humility, and spirituality through the, you can say, contrast between the two characters and their different paths in life. Okay, now let me start the poem. So, the first line of the poem said, Sannyasi Upagupta was asleep under the shade of the city ramparts of Mathura. So the poem begins by introducing whom Upagupta. Who is Upagupta? A sannyasi, a wandering ascetic. When we say that wandering, it's called as moving one place to the other place. As you know that the kind of people ascetics are who has renounced or uh, you can say that believed worldly pleasures, happiness, and attachments. He is sleeping under the shade of the city walls of Mathura, an unseen city in India that was a center of Buddhism at the time. The second line says, a breeze had blown off the lamps and flames. The palace doors were shut. The stars of the night had disappeared behind clouds. So the poet sets the scene of a dark, silent night, suggesting calmness or spiritual solitude. Solitude means loneliness. The lamps and flares that usually light up the city have been blown up by the wind. So the palace doors are closed and the stars are hidden behind clouds. The darkness also foreshadows the suffering and isolation that Vasavadatta will face later in the poem. Is it? So that's what it is stated. A breeze had blown off the lamps and flares. The palace doors were shut. The stars of the night had disappeared behind clouds, whose foot adorned with ankles or anklets suddenly rang on his chest. Startled, the sannyasi woke up, his tired limbs. So the poet introduces a sudden contrast to the quietness of the night. The poet does what? Introduces a sudden contrast to the quietness of the night with the sound of anklets ringing on Upagupta's chest. So, when we say that anklets are ornaments worn by women that produce tinkling sound. So, often associated with what? Dancers and courtesans. The sound startles, surprises Upagupta awake from his sleep, interrupting his dreams. So, this suggests that Upagupta's peaceful state of mind is disturbed by the interference or intrusion of worldly desires and temptation, right? Then a dim light shone on his forgiving eyes. The court dancers was going for a tryst with her lover, intoxicated with her own vermeil bloom, dressed in a deep blue sari, her ornament tinkled. So the poet describes the appearance of Vasavadatta. So, who is Vasavadatta? The court dancer who has accidentally stepped on Upagupta. She is carrying a dim light that shines on Upagupta's eyes, which are described as forgiving. So implying that he doesn't hold any grudge or anger against her. So Vasavadatta is on her way to meet her lover, and she is intoxicated of, with her own vernal bloom, meaning that she is enjoying her youth and beauty. She is dressed in a deep blue sari, a traditional that you can say that a traditional Indian garment, and her ornaments make a tinkling sound. She moves. The poet uses vivid imagery uh, and sensory details. Vivid imagery is called as a clear, natural images, and sensory is called as a feeling. Details to what you can say that describe or portray Vasavadatta as an attractive and sensual woman who represents worldly pleasures and passions. Then, in the next line, it is stated, as her foot fell on the monk, Vasavadatta halted with her lantern. She examined his young, radiant form in a calm, enduring, tender face. A glance gleaming with compassion, a white moon-like forehead aglow with the gracious peace. So the poet narrates how Vasavadatta stops when she realizes that she has stepped on Upagupta. She uses her lantern to examine his appearance, and she is struck by the radiance and the peace of his face. She notices the compassion in his eyes and his calm means, peaceful, serene expression. Right? His forehead described as being as white as the moon. It symbolizes purity, enlightenment, enlightenment, and inner peace. The contrast between her worldly beauty and his spiritual beauty is a highlight. So it symbolizes what the core conflict of the point, right? Now, so when we understood that she is struck by his young radiant form, which contrasts with his ascetic lifestyle, so she notices his calm, enduring tender face, which shows his patience and kindness. His glance of gleaming with compassion, which shows his empathy and understanding. And his white moon-like forehead aglow with the gracious peace, which shows his knowledge, wisdom, and serenity. The poet uses similes and metaphors to portray or to describe Upagupta as an attractive and spiritual man who represents renunciation and enlightenment. So, in the next part, it is stated the woman spoke in a gentle voice, her grey drooping with embarrassment. Pardon me, O youthful one. I will be grateful if you come to my home. The ground here is hard and rough. This is not the right place to sleep. So the poet narrates how Basavadatta speaks to Upagupta in a gentle voice, showing her politeness and respect. She apologizes for, waking him up and invites him to come to her home, offering him a more comfortable place to sleep than the hard and the rough ground. She also implies she is interested in him romantically or sexually by calling him youthful one and inviting him to her home. Right. Now, the sannyasi responded with kind words. It is not time for me to visit, O graceful one. Please go your way in prosperity. So, when the time is right, I will. When the time is right, I will myself come to your bower. Isn't it? So the poet narrates how Upagupta responds to Vasavadatta's invitation with kind words, showing his courtesy and respect. He declines, he declines her offer to come to her home, saying that it is not yet time for him to visit her. He asks her to go her way in prosperity, meaning that what he wishes her well and happiness. He also promises to come to her bower, meaning her house or means both her house or bedroom, right? When the time is right. This suggests that he is not rejecting her completely, but postponing their meeting for a more appropriate occasion. Now, eventually, a fiery spark thundered, opened a monstrous mouth. The young woman shivered with alarm as a terrible destructive wind howled. A lightning reaped a cruel smile across the sky. So, here the poet describes a sudden change in the weather as a storm breaks out. A fiery spark thundered, meaning that a lightning bolt struck with a loud noise, opened a monstrous mouth. It means that it created a large opening in the sky. The young woman shivered with alarm, meaning that Vasavadatta was scared by the star. As a terribly destructive wind howled, means that a strong wind blew in a violent manner. Lightning reaped a cruel smile across the sky. That another lightning bolt flashed or immediately appeared across the sky in a mocking way. So the poet uses personification and imagery to describe the star as a violent and threatening, menacing force that threatens Vasavadatta's peace and safety. So again, it is stated that the year was not, it was an evening in Calcutta. The breeze fluttered with restlessness. The trees along the path were laden with the birds. The king's garden was lush with what? Lush with, you can say that, blooms of bakul, marul, and rajnikanda. The poet shifts the scene to another time and place. After some months have passed, it was an evening in Calcutta. It indicates that it was the springtime according to the Indian calendar. The breeze moved fluttered with restlessness, that the wind was gentle and playful. The trees along the path were laden with birds, that they were full of new growth. The king's garden was filled, lush with the blooms of bakul, parul, and rajnikanda. So that it was filled with the fragrant flowers. Fragrant means called as a smell. Arrow means that called as a beautiful scented of smell of the flowers of different kinds. The poet here also you find out that uses the clear natural images to describe the beauty of nature during what? During spring. Now, in that case, the poet uses imagery and sensory details to do what? Now, to describe the spring season as a time of beauty and renewal. Then, from afar, wafting with the draught was the mesmerizing timbre of a flute. The city was empty as everyone had left for the festival of flowers in the honeymoons. So, the poet describes how from afar, wafting with the draught was the mesmerizing timbre of a flute. It indicates that from a distance, carried by the wind, was the enchanting sound. Enchanting means called as mirthful or called as some kind of a happy sound of a flute or beautiful sound of a flute. The city was empty as everyone had left for the festival of flowers in the honeydews that there were no one in the city as they had all gone to celebrate a festival of flowers. That there was no one in the city as they had all gone to celebrate a festival. Celebrate a festival of flowers. Yeah. Festival of flowers in the sweet smelling forest. The poet uses again alliteration. Alliteration means repetition of, you can say that sounds. Generally, we say that uh, 33 things. So you can find out right? The poet uses alliteration and assonance. So when you talk about alliteration and assonance, both are poetic device. So here you can find out sweet smelling forest, sir. And you also find out assonance. Assonance is called as means vowel sounds, repetition of the vowel sound. So, why? To create a musical effect and to suggest a festive and joyful atmosphere. So, if you see that here, the poet uses from afar, wafting with the draft, was the mesmerizing timbers of a flute. The city was empty as everyone had left for the festival of love. Now you find out purr. In the honeywood woods or honey woods. Now in that case also we find out the means oo sound, right? Vowel sounds repetition. So that's called as assonance. And for consonants, consonant sound repetition and alliteration, when you find out consecutive means sound we draw from the two words. Now, here in the next line, you would find out the full moon smiled. The full moon smiled at the town, emptied of people and protectors on the lonely moonlit path. The sannyasi walked alone. So the poet describes how the full moon smiled at the town, emptied of people and protectors. It means that the moon shone brightly on the deserted city. Deserted means the city that is emptied. On the lonely moonlit path, the sannyasi walked alone, that Upagupta walked by himself on a path illuminated or shined by the moonlight. The poet uses personification and contrasts to create a sense of loneliness and isolation for Upagupta. The poet also said, under leafy branches from where cuckoos cooed repeatedly, after so many days, was it time for him to fulfill his tryst? So, with the beloved. So, here the poet tries to say that how under leafy branches, from where cuckoos cooed repeatedly, that Upagupta walked under trees where cuckoos sang over and over. After so many days, was it time for him to fulfill his tryst with the beloved? So it indicates that after waiting for so long, was he finally going to meet his lover? The poet uses two rhetorical statement. Rhetorical means called as a kind of a question that doesn't need answer. So the poet uses rhetorical questions and repetition to create a sense of anticipation and create the interest for Upagupta's destination or curiosity for Upagupta's destination. Crossing the town, the wise one, crossing the town, the wise one went beyond the city walls. He stood beside the moat in the shade of the mango grove. So the poet narrates how crossing the town, the wise one went beyond the city walls. That Upagupta, it indicates that Upagupta left the city and went outside its boundaries. So the poem explores the different forms and expressions of love, isn't it? Such as romantic love, spiritual love, and compassion, compassionate love. So Basavadatta and Upagupta represent what? Two different kinds of lovers. One who is driven by worldly passions and desires, and one who is detached from worldly attachments and you can say seeks enlightenment or desire enlightenment or wishes enlightenment. Right? Their Christ is not a physical or sexual meeting or encounter, but a meeting of souls. But a meeting of souls that takes or goes beyond the boundaries of time. not only beyond the boundaries of the time, space, and society. So the poem shows how love can change a person's life and bring them peace and happiness. So the poem also explores the theme of compassion, which is the ability to empathize with the help others who are suffering. Upagupta demonstrates compassion by caring for Basu when she is afflicted by a deadly disease and cast out by the townsfolk. He doesn't judge her for her past action or her present condition, but treats her with the kindness and respect. He offers her water. He chants a mantra and applies what? Applies a soothing balm to her body. He also tells her that he has come for their trust, fulfilling his promise and giving her hope and comfort. The poem shows how compassion can heal a person's wounds and bring them dignity, self respect, and grace. Even the poem also explores the theme of spirituality, which is the hunger for a higher purpose or a thirst, quest for a higher purpose and meaning in life. Upagupta represents a spiritual seeker, right, who has renounced worldly pleasures and followed the path of Buddhism. He is not tempted by Basavadatta's beauty or wealth, but remains faithful to his promises and principles. He also does not reject Basavadatta's invitation, but postpones it for a more appropriate time. He believes that everything happens according to a God's plan, divine's plan, and that he will meet her when the time is right. So, in this case, the poem shows how spirituality can guide a person's action and decisions and bring them wisdom, knowledge, and serenity. So, all total, if you talk about the significance or importance of Basavadatta's character, Basavadatta's character is important for several reasons in the poem. So, like, first it's called as she represents the contrast between the worldly and the spiritual life. Basavadatta is a court dancer and she enjoys her beauty, she enjoys her wealth, and she is also famous. She is driven by her passions, she is driven by her desires. She desires happiness and uh, pleasures in her lover. She is also, you can say that, easily affected to the dangers, vulnerable to the dangers and uncertainties of the world, such as the storm and the disease that afflict her. She symbolizes the, you can say that, impermanence. She symbolizes the impermanence and suffering of worldly existence, as well as the potential or ability for redemption and transformation through love and compassion. She represents the human connection that Upagupta seeks and offer or desires and offers. Like Basvadatta is the only person who interacts with Upagupta in the poem. She is the one who makes him wake up from his sleep, maybe in unintentional. So invites him to her home and recognizes his beauty and kindness. She is also the one who receives his comfort, care, and promise when she is in pain and isolation or solitude. So, Basavadatta symbolizes the human bond that goes beyond social norms and social biases, prejudices, and that enriches and elevates both their lives. Right? I can also point out that she represents the fulfillment of Upagupta's Tryst. She represents the fulfillment of Upagupta's Tryst. It means Vasavadatta is the beloved that Upagupta has been waiting for since their first meeting. He tells her that he will come to her when the time is right, and he keeps his word. He meets her under the moonlight in the mango grove, where they share a moment of closeness and peace, intimacy and peace, you can say. So she symbolizes the completion of Upagupta's spiritual journey as he realizes his true nature and purpose through his love and compassion for her. Right. Now, in that case, means if I say here the importance of Upagupta's character also, under you can say that what several means points that actually tell us why Upagupta is an important character. So highlighting his renunciation, the spiritual strength, compassion, detachment from worldly pleasure, and his symbolic importance in the poem. Right. So it describes that what the poem Abisara, the Tryst, which is trying to include the basis in Buddhist legend about the monk Upagupta and the Cartesian Vasavadatta. So it also indicates that what the setting and context of the poem indicates about the time period, third century BC. So third is called as the two-part structure of the poem. Two parts the structure of the poem. It means one dark and stormy night and one festive evening. On the left side, you can find out means sorry, on the one side you can say the idea means stated about the importance of August, right? Like you can say that eventually a fiery spark thundered, opened a monstrous mouth. The young woman shivered with alarm as a terrifying, destructive wind howled. A lightning leaped a cruel smile across the sky. So this explains the poetic imagery, such as the thunder, lightning, storm, and the emotional impact of Basudara. It symbolizes the peak of summer in India, right? When you talk about the significance of August, it symbolizes the peak of summer in India. So when you find out the heat, drought, and storms. It also foreshadows Basavadatta's inner turmoil and approaching suffering. It highlights the contrast between what the forces of nature and Upagupta's kindness or compassion, which shows in the poem, right or not? Similar to that, when we talk about importance of April, so it mentions that what means um, in the opening lines that what it mentions that April appears in the second part of the poem, right? So when Upagupta finds Vasavadatta in a disease and abandoned state, so the text begins explaining the symbolic meaning of April in contrasting to August, right? So when we talk about the significance of or April in the quoted means extract, it is given that the year was not out, it was an evening in Chaitra. The breeze fluttered with restlessness. The trees along the path were laden with birds. The king's garden was aflush with the blooms of bakur, orange, and rajnigandha. So this indicates about what means highlights the spring season, Chaitra, which is known as a March or April. So here, if you see that the imagery, like the breeze fluttered with restlessness, it means the breeze fluttered with restlessness means playful, vibrant wind. Trees laden with birds, it's called as a renewal and new growth. The king's garden full of blooming flowers, it indicates about abundance and beauty. The poet uses sensory details to create nothing but a joyful, celebratory mood. So, April's significance in the poem represents nothing but the contrast to winter's coldness and brightness. It symbolizes renewal, growth, joy, and hope. It foreshadows Vasubhadatta's spiritual change and relief through Upagupta's kindness. It sets the stage for the long awaited Christ. The long awaited Christ means a moment of beauty, love, and harmony between Upagupta and Vasubhadatta. So, when we talk about the critical remark on the poem, so we can see that the main critical observation in the poem is what? The poem is poignant and evocative. So it deals with the themes of love, compassion, transformation, and selfless service. So what Rabindranath Tagore tries to describe or portrays the inner journey of the monk, Upagupta, and the courtesan means Vasubhadra. So um, another thing is called as the poem filled with nothing but the rich imagery that helps create clear sensory experiences and highlights the opposite between or contrast between worldly life and spiritual life. So not only it carries the imagery, it also carries many other literary devices like we can say personification, simile, metaphor, alliteration, assonance, and rhetorical question. If I talk about imagery, it means natural images. If I talk about personification, it means called as a carry the quality of a human being, uh, find out object, right? So, that is known as a personification. Similarly, when you compare between two ideas using with as or like metaphor, when you compare between two of the ideas or two of the persons or two of the object or two of the qualities without using as or like or directly. Alliteration, we find out that that called as a repetition of sounds, right? Assonance is called as a repetition of vowel sounds. Consonance, repetition of the consonants. We also draw rhetorical questions, so where we do not expect the answer, but we just ask questions. So these devices deepen the point's meaning and increase the lyrical quality of the story. You can say that. Now, the that is the reason you can say that the title justifies because means Abisara the Tryst is suitable for the word. Why? Abisara is a Sanskrit word. It means going towards or approaching or to meet one's beloved. That's what it's called as Abisara or the Tryst. So it expresses desire, longing, uh, it expresses anticipation, and it also expresses the emotional journey of the lovers. The tryst means a secret meeting of lovers or an appointment at a specific time or place. It reflects secrecy, closeness, intimacy. and ultimate fulfillment when Upagupta and Vasavadatta meet under the moonlight. So, therefore, the title emphasizes the mix of Indian and English cultural backgrounds, highlighting Tagore's ability to, connect the East and West through universal themes like love and compassion. Right. Then, if I talk about means imagery and symbolism in the poem, I can say that what it creates clear picture of the setting and mood. Example like dark, stormy night imagery. It also says that gentle, serene spring evening. It appeals to all senses like sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, isn't it? How you can say flowers, wind, flute, colors, fragrance, isn't it? So, in that case, we can find out the image. Second is called as a symbolism. When I say symbolism, I can point out objects and events represent deeper like you point out symbolism like Vasavadatta symbolizes worldly beauty, pride, and passion. And Upagupta symbolizes compassion and you can say spiritual enlightenment. So even storm, spring season, moon, and mango fruit. Storm represents suffering and turmoil. Spring season represents renewal, change, and hope. Moon and the mango grove symbolizes nothing but the peace and the lovers' togetherness, or called as a lovers' reunion, isn't it? So this is what means the important parts of the poem and the description. Let me go for some of the questions that you may find out means come in your exam, right? Okay. Okay. So I can say that what some questions which will be a means, um, possible thought to come in your exam. So the first question is called as a discuss or means explain the importance of the title of the poem and how does the poem reflect the theme and the tone of the poem. Now, if I talk about the title of the poem, Abisara, the Tryst, is important for various reasons. Like I said, Abhisara is a Sanskrit word that means moving towards, going towards, or approaching, or nearer. It is often used to describe the act of going to meet one's beloved or lover. The title suggests the theme of love and lunging that pervades the poem, as well as it also shows the anticipation and curiosity that both Upagupta and Vasavadatta feel for each other. Second is called as the tryst. It is an English word that means a secret meeting of lovers or an appointment to meet at a certain time and place. The title suggests what? Theme of secrecy and intimacy that you can say that characterizes the point, as well as it also shows the fulfillment and peace that both Upagupta and Vasavadatta experience when they finally meet under the moonlight. Right. The title also creates a contrast between the two words. Abisara and the Tryst, which uh, reflect different cultural and linguistic backgrounds, right, of the poet and the audience. The title shows how Rabindranath Tagore connects the gap between the East and the West, as well as between the ancient and the modern through his universal and timeless message of love and compassion. The title also reflects the tone of the poem, which is lyrical and influential or evocative. The title creates a musical effect through um, repetition of consonant sounds or alliteration, and assonance is called as a repetition of vowel sounds. The title also creates a visual effect through the use of natural images, the use of words to create a picture in the reader's mind. That the title creates a sense of beauty, harmony, and mystery that matches the mood and atmosphere of the poem. Right. That's the first question. Second question would be discuss the contrast between the worldly and the spiritual life as portrayed by Rabindranath Tagore in this poem. How does he use the characters of Vasavadatta and Upagupta to describe this contrast? Right. Now, if I say that what one of the main themes of the poem is the contrast between the worldly and the spiritual life, which Tagore describes through the characters of Vasavadatta and Upagupta. Vasavadatta represents the worldly life, which is characterized by materialism, uh, passion, and pleasure. Upagupta at the same time represents the spiritual life, which is characterized by detachment, wisdom, and peace, isn't it? Then you also find out that Vasavadatta is a court dancer who enjoys her beauty, wealth, and fame. She is driven by her passions and desires. She desires pleasure and happiness in her lover. She is also easily affected to the dangers and uncertainties of the world, such as we find out the storm and the disease that afflict her. She symbolizes the impermanence and suffering of worldly existence, as well as means the potential for redemption and change, transformation through love and compassion. Whereas Upagupta is a sannyasi who lives in a simple and detached life as an aesthetic, ascetic. She symbolizes, he symbolizes or he has renounced worldly pleasures and attachment and follows the path of Buddhism. He is not desired by, you can say that Vasavadatta's beauty or wealth, but remains faithful to his promises and principles. He doesn't reject Vasavadatta's invitation, but postpones it for a more appropriate time. He believes that what everything happens according to a God's plan, and that he will meet her when the time is right. He symbolizes the detachment and patience of spiritual existence, as well as the potential for transformation and enlightenment through love and compassion. So, Tagore uses various literary devices such as contrast, irony, and symbolism to describe, you can say, this contrast between the two characters and their lifestyle. For example, he contrasts the dark and stormy night in the first part of the poem with the serene and festive evening in the second part of the poem. He also contrasts Basavadatta's lavish and superficial lifestyle with Upagupta's simple and profound lifestyle. He uses irony to show how Basavadatta's worldly success leads to her downfall. while Upagupta's spiritual renunciation leads to his fulfillment. He also uses symbolism to show how Vasavadatta and Upagupta represent different aspects of human nature and different paths to happiness. Isn't it? Okay.